Do you ever get the feeling that something out there is trying to reach you? Not randomly, not by accident, but deliberately. I didn't believe in that feeling, not until this mission. We weren't looking for anything unusual, just another routine assignment, mapping empty space, logging coordinates, nothing more. Everything was normal, quiet, predictable. And then we received the signal. At first, it didn't make sense. It wasn't random, but it wasn't natural either. It had structure, repetition, intent, almost like a transmission. We ran it through every system we had, cross-checked it with known frequencies, archives, even classified data. Nothing matched. And then someone noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. The signal pattern. It was human, not similar, not inspired, identical. The same encoding structure we've been using for decades, the same timing intervals, the same sequencing logic. It was us, broadcasting from a place where no human had ever been. Mission Control told us to ignore it, mark it as interference, move on. But the signal didn't stop. It kept repeating, over and over, like it was waiting for someone to hear it. So we did something we weren't supposed to do. We traced it. And what we found wasn't just a signal, it was a planet. At first, we thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system, a miscalculation, something explainable. But the coordinates didn't change. No matter how many times we recalibrated, no matter how many systems we cross-checked, it kept pointing to the same place. A region of space that was supposed to be empty. No stars, no planets. At first, we saw nothing, just darkness, endless, silent darkness. And then, something began to form, a shape, faint, barely visible against the void. A planet. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was, it wasn't supposed to exist. We ran it through the database. Nothing. No record. No prior observation. No classified mention. It was like this planet had just appeared. And then we noticed something else. Something that made even less sense. The surface. It didn't look natural. Not entirely. There were patterns, lines, shapes, too structured to be random, too precise to be geological. It looked familiar. Something about it felt wrong. We brought the visuals up on the main display, enhanced the surface, zoomed in, and that's when it started. The feeling. I've seen a lot of planets. Dead ones, frozen ones, some that didn't even make sense. But this one felt different. At first I couldn't explain it. There was no clear reason, nothing obvious. And yet, something about it felt wrong. The feeling. Like I had seen it before. Not the planet, but the shapes. The patterns weren't random. They weren't natural formations. They were organized, structured, intentional. We started marking points, connecting the lines, mapping the surface. And the more we analyzed it, the more familiar it became. Angles that shouldn't exist in nature, straight edges, too perfect, symmetry, too precise. Focused on one region, then another, and another. Every time we zoomed in, it became clearer. It wasn't just a planet. It looked like a place someone had built. We tried to stay logical, tried to convince ourselves that there had to be another explanation. Natural formations can sometimes look artificial. It happens. Patterns, illusions, coincidence. But this wasn't that. We increased the resolution, focused on one region, then another, and another. Every time we zoomed in, it became clearer. These weren't random shapes. They were structures, massive ones, rectangular foundations, straight corridors, symmetrical layouts. Some of them stretched for miles. We overlaid the measurements, compared them to known architectural data. They matched. Not alien, not unknown. Human. Exactly human. The proportions, the angles, even the spacing between structures. It was identical to urban planning models used on Earth. Cities. This planet had cities, and they weren't ancient enough to be forgotten. They looked preserved, like they hadn't been abandoned for very long. We sent everything back to Mission Control, the signal, the images, the structures, everything. And then we waited. For a moment, it felt like they didn't know what to say. Then the response came, clear, immediate. Do not approach. They didn't explain why, no analysis, no discussion, just stay away. That should have been enough. Protocol is clear. When something doesn't make sense. It wasn't just a city. It was an entire civilization. And we were heading straight into it. At first, it was subtle. You don't get closer, you leave. But this wasn't something we could just ignore. A human signal, coming from a planet that shouldn't exist, covered in structures that shouldn't be there. We needed answers. And deep down, we already knew. We weren't going to listen. We initiated descent. Engines adjusted, trajectory locked, altitude decreasing. The planet, it started to grow in the window, slowly at first, then faster. The closer we got, the more real it felt. Too real. Surface details became clearer. The structures, the layout, the scale of it. Layouts that matched interior designs from Earth, rooms, sections, spaces that had purpose. This wasn't imitation. It wasn't coincidence. Someone had lived here. Humans. At first, it was subtle. Easy to miss, if you weren't paying attention. We were moving through one of the intersections, scanning, documenting, trying to make sense of it all. And then, we saw it. A marking on the wall. It wasn't alien. It wasn't random. It was a symbol. We moved closer, ran a scan, enhanced the surface. And that's when it hit us. It was English. Not translated, not adapted. Original. Faded, but readable. Like it had been written by a human hand. That wasn't the only thing. We started finding more. Objects, shapes, fragments of things that didn't belong here. Tools. They didn't match any mission, any record, any known timeline. They were ahead. Decades ahead. This wasn't a lost colony. It wasn't an ancient civilization. This place. Structures inside the structures. Layouts that matched interior designs from Earth. Rooms, sections, spaces that had purpose. This wasn't imitation. It wasn't coincidence. Someone had lived here. Humans. But that raises a question. If humans were here, where are they now? We needed answers. So we went deeper, further inside the structure, beyond the corridors, past the empty spaces, until we found it. A central chamber, larger than anything we had seen so far. And in the middle of it, something was still active. A system, not broken, not abandoned, running. Dim light pulsed through the room, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The signal changed. It wasn't repeating anymore. It was updating. New data appeared on the screen. Coordinates. We approached carefully, scanning everything, recording everything. And then we saw the data. Dates. Human calendar format. We checked them again, cross-referenced. They didn't match history. They didn't match any mission, any record, any known timeline. They were ahead, decades ahead. This wasn't a lost colony. It wasn't an ancient civilization. This place hadn't been built in the past. It was from the future, our future. The structures, the signals, the systems, they were all human, but not yet, not from our time. We should have left. The moment we saw those dates, all the recordings, they didn't respond, not right away. Hours passed, then finally, a message came through. Return to Earth immediately. No explanation, no questions, just come back. We should have turned back, but we didn't. We stayed, just long enough to make one last mistake. The system, it wasn't just running, it was responding. At first, it was subtle, a slight change in the rhythm, a shift in the light. Then, it reacted, to us. The closer we got, the faster it pulsed, like it was recognizing something, recognizing us. And then, the signal changed. It wasn't repeating anymore. It was updating. New data appeared on the screen, coordinates, not from the planet, from Earth, from our exact location.